Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Wherever you are, thank you for tuning in. Zero Authority is a community of people who believe in open source and permissionless systems built on stacks secured by Bitcoin. Today, we have a special guest, Diwaker, who recently became the CTO of Hiro, and his previous role was at Dropbox, where he led the engineering team. And so we're so stoked to have you on today, Diwaker. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's great to be here. And as I was telling earlier, we were supposed to connect last week. Didn't happen, so I'm finally glad that we're finally making it.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you on. To jump in here, your role as a CTO at Hiro, can you tell us more about that? On the Stacker chat with Gina, Munib, and Alex, you guys were talking about Hiro and some of the mission and what you guys plan on the roadmap. But can you just give us an idea of what you do at Hiro, and then we'll talk about some of the roadmap and targets that you guys have coming up.
For sure. So first of all, just give me 1 second. I think my headphones are giving me some problems, so I will switch over to wired headphones.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Awesome. So as I was saying earlier, and I think I mentioned this in the static chapters, just very blessed and grateful to be working with such an amazing team. Regardless of what my job is or my title is, the team is really where all the credit is due. So just want to say shout out to all of the heroes and thank you to them. In terms of what my job is or how I think of my job, I think of my job as at the end of the day, I hold myself accountable for everything that happens in engineering, product, and design in the company. And so, in that capacity, taking charge and helping shape our product strategy as well as our technical strategy. But then to break that down a little bit further, I look at sort of four dimensions of my job. The first one is just execution. Are we delivering results? Are we doing it with high quality? Are we doing it on time? The second dimension is just setting the direction. Do we have a good product strategy? Do we have some good technical foundations to help deliver on that product strategy? The third one is around talent. Do we have the right people in the right roles? Are we hiring and growing the team that we have? Are we investing in our workforce? And then the final one is culture and values. Are we creating a workplace that we all feel proud to be a part of and we enjoy spending as much time as we do with our coworkers, and even though we're all remote in different parts of the world, we're still spending a significant part of our daily lives with each other. So it's important that we have a culture that reflects that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, can you pull up the JPEG on the Can't Be Evil Summit? So super stoked to have you, Diwaker, because I remember when you first came to Hero, and I was thinking, so you came from Dropbox, and obviously Dropbox has been a huge success, and so whatever Munib said to you to convince you to come over, it worked, right? And I remember this Can't Be Evil Summit, and maybe you guys need to bring this back too, and because there were a lot of great talks during that first one, but are the principles still the same? To me, I still see as ownership still being number one. Is that anything sticks out to you on that list?
Absolutely, and it's funny that you pulled up the slide. I haven't went back and looked at that slide deck in a while, but as I was seeing this, I was like, yeah, like a lot of this still resonates. I'm glad that things worked out that way. I mean, if you look at the mission of Stacks and indeed for Stacks as a project and Hero as a company, is still all around a user-owned internet. A version of the internet where we have more sovereign ownership over our online identity, our data, and our assets. And then there's the specific implementation detail, which in our case is building on Stacks secured by Bitcoin. But the core vision is still driven by ownership, very much so. In terms of sort of safety over convenience, you can see this reflected in the design for clarity and in a lot of the strict design choices we make, where I think it's important for us to recognize that blockchains are such a fundamentally different programming environment that trying to think of them as regular software engineering and applying the same tools or the same practices there doesn't, is not guaranteed to work. So for instance, some languages might optimize for familiarity, that everyone is familiar with JavaScript. Let's build a language that looks like JavaScript. But that might not be the right choice to make because bugs and mistakes are very expensive in blockchains. So you can definitely still see that reflecting in a lot of our choices. Same with permissionless and trust. The Stacks blockchain is really optimize and makes trade-offs in favor of decentralization and security and permissionless nature. Anyone can choose to be a miner. Anyone can join the network. And then I had a tweet of maybe a week or so ago where I said that engineering is all about making trade-offs. And when you're choosing systems, you should choose systems that make those trade-offs explicit, because all systems are making trade-offs. Sometimes they just hide them or they make them implicit. And why I mentioned this is it's relevant in the context of something like hyperchains, where hyperchains are a scalability solution designed to solve certain kinds of problems or optimize for certain kind of workloads that don't perform very well on the Stacks blockchain proper. But they can do so because they make different sets of trade-offs. But we're making those trade-offs explicit by requiring developers and users to opt into hyperchains. So if you're a DEX and you really want to take advantage of this environment where it's better for higher throughput, lower latency transactions, but you're okay with a slightly more trusted environment, then that's a choice that you can make. And then at the end of the day, everything still anchors back to Bitcoin. And then yeah, the last four also still resonate. I think we're still now as a company, as we are focused on developer tools and bringing new products and tools to market. We still want to be very nimble and agile, but we never want to put our developers' trust or user funds or assets at risk. So if there's ever a question of should we not do something because it might endanger user assets, we're going to take the extra time to do the testing before we release something. So still very resonant. Yeah. Thank you for pulling that up.
Yeah, because I remember after the 2017 bull run, and I was kind of thinking, okay, well, I guess blockchain is over now. So what's next? And then I saw the ICO for the second one, and BlockSec at the time. Now Stacks, they were the only one who actually did a registered security offering. So I said, okay, this is interesting. And just seeing you guys on stage, Munib, yourself, Naval, and Balaji, and I thought, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but they're going to build it on top of Bitcoin, and I just kept tuning in and watching, and as over time, I was hoping to build something on top of Stacks, and now here we are with Zero Authority and this community aspect that we have, and obviously it's just so cool to see all the tools now and building with the hyperchains. Is it going to be easy to set up a hyperchain for like any DEX or NFT project that has that needs a high throughput?
The short answer is yes. I think the longer answer is, we're still sort of very early. All of the code is open source. People can check it out and provide feedback and participate. So I would distinguish sort of, the code being open and anyone being able to run it from who is actually running it and what does the production deployment reflect. So, the API is a good analogy where the API is open source. There are some people who run their own API nodes, but for the most part, people rely on an API instance that Hiro is operating. And so with hyperchains, I might imagine something similar might happen where, the hyperchains source code is there. People want to run and deploy their own hyperchains. They're free to do that. And I would imagine that there would be some production instances that are maybe more popular or more trusted in the community than others. And we'll see kind of how that shakes out. But it's too soon to say.
And then in terms of tools, like there's the Hiro wallet, there's the APIs, like what else is in kind of the suite of products or the platform?
Sure. So to be very upfront, I mean, there isn't a Hiro platform in existence today. And so that's something that we are hoping to really bring to life this year. But if you zoom out a little bit and think of, what ultimately what is a platform? A platform is, at least in my view, it's an aggregation of managed services that developers consume. And viewed through that lens, there are already a handful of things that you could argue, are platform-like in that sense. So, this managed API instance that I spoke about, we're doing anywhere between 2 to 400 million queries per month on that instance. I know there are a lot of other API deployments out there, and now, there are other APIs being developed, which is all great to see. I think at the end of the day, more competition, more choice in the ecosystem is great, both for developers and for users. So that's kind of how we're thinking about the platform. But coming back to your question, so we think of our offerings as, where are we meeting developers in their journey? And so if you're someone who's just starting to write smart contracts, we have Clarinet, which allows you to build, debug, test, deploy smart contracts. So it's like an end-to-end lifecycle management tool for smart contracts. Then once you have smart contracts and you're building an application you want to integrate with either existing smart contracts or other elements of the Stacks blockchain, you need some sort of libraries or SDKs. That's where we have Stacks.js, and there are some other libraries as well in the community that people are using, which is great to see. And then sort of going a step beyond that, we obviously have the API that I spoke about earlier. And just last week, we gave a sneak peek of some new, I would say, prototype features that we are exploring, thinking of things like, if you have a smart contract deployed, how do you debug the state in that smart contract? So making it easier for people to explore not just transactions and things like that, but the data maps inside a smart contract, being able to walk through lists inside smart contracts. So more like a debugger kind of an environment for deployed smart contracts. So that's something that we're looking into. Another thing that we're playing around with is the idea of Lambdas for blockchain. So think of like a serverless function where as a developer, you can just provide a snippet of code and say, if something of interest happens on either Stacks or Bitcoin, do this, run this piece of code. So it's an idea similar to serverless in traditional cloud computing or AWS Lambdas, if you're familiar with that, but really bringing that to the context of blockchains. But again, this is just some initial exploration meant to collect feedback. We want to hear from developers and see if this is resonating. These are the kind of pain points that they want us to solve. But then what we want to do and work towards this year is really tie all of this together into an actual platform offering where the kind of workflow would be very familiar to other developer platforms that you might encounter. So as a developer, you might log in somewhere, get some credentials, and then be able to access. So for example, we often hear from developers that they love using our API, but sometimes they send us so much traffic that they start getting rate limited. Now, we don't really want to rate limit anyone. We just have to do it today because that's the only way we can provide the service for free for everyone. So if we start introducing some notion of credentials where we can actually see who is sending us how much traffic for what purpose, then we can start to be a little bit more granular in saying, okay, for all general traffic, we can treat it a certain way. For other traffic, maybe we have slightly different treatment. And then we'll see kind of down the road where it leads us. So again, I think for us, the focus this year is just on value creation, really laser focused on all of the pain points that developers in Stacks and Bitcoin struggle with, and go out and solve them. And by doing that, bring in more developers into our ecosystem, because that's how we all win. If we can bring in the best talent from across the industry to come in and build exciting things, that would be great for us as a company and for Stacks at large. Another kind of general comment I'd make is we are, obviously all very committed to Bitcoin, and it's kind of ironic if you think about it. Most people don't associate Bitcoin with developers and developer community, and so as a result, the state of developer tooling in Bitcoin is actually pretty sad compared to the kind of developer tools you might see in Ethereum or other chains. And so that's also another thing that we're really looking carefully at to see, is there room for good developer tools in Bitcoin. What does that look like? And how do we weave more Bitcoin functionality throughout our products, whether it's our Explorer, or our libraries and other things. So yeah, that's a little bit about what's coming up and how we're thinking about the rest of this year.
Hey, Kurt, can you pull up that the image of the blog post?
Sure.
And if anyone out there is tuning into this, you can always find the blog post on hero.so, and this is something that we were just talking about a couple weeks back, just with Zero Authority, just some of the tools that are coming for developers. And there was also that survey. Diwaker, do you know if the survey is on the blog post?
The survey is closed, unfortunately. We closed the survey, I think, 2 days ago.
Okay.
Yeah. But thank you to everyone who filled out the survey. We got a ton of really, really great responses.
Yeah, absolutely. Kurt, the last one on there, that image there. So when you go to the blog post, you can read on some of the platform changes. And I've been super fortunate to see the evolution, because I remember everything was under stacks.org, and then there was you guys created Hiro, and now you guys have the tutorials and documentation. So super cool. The last thing I wanted to ask about, so Stacks 2.1 is coming, and there's going to be, I know I'm excited for continuous stacking. So I know, because I've told a lot of friends about stacks, and I say, well, you have to lock it up for like a 2-week period because the Bitcoin blocks and how Stacks blockchain works with the proof of transfer. Is there anything that you're excited about specifically in 2.1? I know there are a couple of things, right? So there's the continuous stacking, there's a locking, and how the chain is going to work.
Yeah. So first, I think obligatory caveat from my side that Stacks, the blockchain itself, is a community project under Foundation governance and goes through an open source governance process in terms of what makes it into the blockchain and when releases happen. So our role as a company in this is merely as a participant, much like any other entity in the ecosystem. And as a company, our kind of stance is that anything that is, again, going back to developers, anything that is a pain point for developers and the solution exists in making some changes to the Stacks blockchain, like we are motivated to push those changes and advocate for these changes. A good example is the SIP12 network upgrade that happened back in November, where there was a lot of feedback from developers around transaction confirmation times and throughput and capacity. And so we did a lot of work on benchmarking and participated in the SIP12 process to push that through. And for me, it was really good to see that the governance process actually work in action, and that the upgrade was approved by sort of overwhelming community support. We don't even operate a miner, and all of the miners kind of supported it, upgraded the nodes, all of the exchanges. So it was the first hard fork in Stacks and was non-contentious. A lot of blockchains don't really make it this far, so I feel it's a good milestone for us. But coming back to Stacks 2.1, the reason I give that caveat is I can't really comment on timing for when Stacks 2.1 might happen. But obviously there are elements in Stacks 2.1 that we care deeply about. So there are 2 or 3 kind of broad classes of improvements in Stacks 2.1, and I think a good or good or bad, depending how you look at it. A good thing about something like Stacks 2.1 is it's an opportunity to bundle up any consensus breaking changes. So since the Stacks blockchain has launched, and even since the SIP12 upgrade, there have been sort of more ideas and suggestions on things that we could do, but which would be consensus breaking. So they'll all kind of get bundled up to the next consensus breaking change, which hopefully will be Stacks 2.1 if something doesn't happen before then. So the couple of broad categories, the first one is just around stacking, making proof of transfer work better and making stacking more flexible. So there will be new capabilities to, as you said, continuously stack, but also to, just extend your, let's say you've stacked some amount and you just want to add, top up that amount. You can do that without having to stack from a different address or with the same. So just relaxing the constraints on what can you do. Similarly, being able to change the time period of the existing stack allocation. So all of those things would become possible. There are going to be some just protocol efficiency improvements as well. There are some corner cases in the current treatment of burn commitments for miners that in certain scenarios can penalize some miners. Again, some of these changes are consensus breaking, so they can't really make it in before that, but I think they will contribute to overall protocol efficiency. Then something that we are personally really excited about is a lot of the changes in Clarity. So there will be there are lots of new native functions in Clarity that are on the table for Stacks 2.1, and there are a handful of functions in there that are specifically oriented around deepening the Bitcoin integration. So if you think about it, the Stacks blockchain effectively includes a light client for Bitcoin as part of the blockchain. And so, in theory, there is no reason why we can't expose most or all of Bitcoin state directly to Clarity smart contracts. And we can go a step further and say, we can give smart contracts some ability to say something happened on Bitcoin, and I'm going to provide you a proof of that happened. And the smart contract is able to verify the proof using its access to Bitcoin state. So things like that, will again help unlock and help people build more things using smart Clarity with even tighter integration with Bitcoin. And you know, regardless of sort of when and how these things happen, I think the most uh, gratifying thing for me to see is that none of these things are slowing people down or becoming blockers. Like if you look at some of the developments in the community, whether it's the Lightning Swap or the Satoshi Bulls bridge, people are finding ways to do interesting things that connect Bitcoin with stacks or connect Ethereum with stacks or maybe other chains. People are figuring out ways to make that happen, and our goal is to figure out how can we make that even more easier and how can we allow for more creative things to exist. So yeah, those are just some of the things in Stacks 2.1 for now.
Excellent. So as we wrap up, I've got one question for you, which is kind of off topic, on topic, and that is San Diego. I looked at your LinkedIn and you spent some time in San Diego. So tell me, what are the one thing you remember, two things you remember as you reflect, 15 years ago or however long it's been?
Yeah, so for listeners who are not aware, I went to UC San Diego. I did a PhD there, so I spent about 5 years in San Diego. Lovely time. I think if I look back on the time, a couple of things that come to mind is first, just the La Jolla beaches. Beautiful, beautiful beaches out there. My one regret is that I did not pick up surfing, and I should have spent more time on the beach. And then the second is just on the UCSD campus, there is a library. It's named after Dr. Theodore Geisel, and better known as Dr. Seuss. So Dr. Seuss was an alumni. The library is named after him. It looks kind of like a spaceship from the outside, and very fond memories of the campus and the library in particular. And Dr. Seuss. I did not grow up reading Dr. Seuss, so when I was on campus in the library, I didn't really appreciate. But then I had a child, and then I was thrown into the world of Dr. Seuss.
That's awesome.
Hey, Diwaker, where can people find more about you, and where should they go to find more about Stacks?
Yeah, so to find more about me, Twitter is probably the best. Links to my website and other places. So it's just twitter.com/DivakarGupta. To find more about Hiro, just go to hiro.so. To find more about Stacks, go to stacks.org and stacks.co.
Well, thanks so much for your time today, Diwaker. We're really appreciative, and Kurt, thanks for putting this together again.
Sure. Yeah. Great to see you guys both and chat with you real quickly. So
thank you both for having me, and thanks for tuning in.
Sure. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Take care.
All right.
Perfect.
Okay, yeah. Right. Am I good to hop off?